This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is a manic Monday. It is July 29th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, you're in for a very special program tonight, 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news analysis about the current situation, current global financial situation. We've got two very special guests coming up. For those of you listening, new listeners, folks, I just want to say that we are the only show where the news is presented to you in 3 dimensions. We do provide the depth to the news coverage. We look beyond the headlines and bylines and bring in the news behind the news. We broadcast live each and every weeknight. Now, our normal broadcasting time is from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, except, of course, when it's not. And those are just a couple of days when we have Steve Quell. We broadcast 9 to midnight Eastern Time of those nights because of our very special program tonight. Now, you can find us, new listeners can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. And I want to say, by the way, I just want to welcome new listeners. We received emails personally from new listeners in 24 states, actually, over the weekend. 6 different countries from Europe to the Southern Hemisphere to Australia. I want to say welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. Joe, welcome to tonight's program.
Very glad to be here. We do have both of our guests, and I'm going to bring them on.
All righty.
Now, bring Steve on first.
Folks, we're in for a great program tonight. We've got Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com and a gentleman known as V, the guerrilla economist, exclusive to Steve Quayle at the moment, exclusive to stevequayle.com. You can find his alerts or his writings at the alert section of stevequayle.com. Gentlemen, welcome to tonight's program.
Good evening, Doug. Good evening, V. Good evening, Joe. And good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about the 4 horsemen of the financial apocalypse. I just want to set something into everyone's thoughts. V, who came on Doug Hagmann's show initially and pretty much exclusively, has been ahead of the curve by so many months that I find it interesting that they'll even quote him word for word, yet there's a few on his sites that obviously give attribution. But I think it's funny because tonight we're going to talk about the Bank of Japan, and V dealt with that before it even became a worry. We're going to talk about the Deutsche Bank. We're going to talk about the ECB, European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, and wherever else we go. The basic monetary maxim or truth for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, if you own a paper-denominated asset, doesn't matter, stock, bond, mutual fund, whatever, that isn't directly tied to a physical unit or commodity, you basically own vapor. And in order for you to understand the most simplest way that I know to take every economic theory that's out there, you can condense it into this, that everything on the planet has a price, the price has been valued, and everything that you think you own is pledged secretly behind your back. All the real estate in America is owned by foreigners. And for the record, all of our national treasures are now surety, if you will, or security, having securitized debt. And the whole Megillah, and as in gorilla, Gorilla, we're going to talk about the 4 monkeys tonight, where people hear nothing, see nothing, do nothing, and absolutely don't want to rock the boat as they're going down with the Titanic, the Lusitania, and every shipwreck, maritime wreck in history. It's all coming to pass. Jim Rogers said the whole economic world is artificial. It's going to end very badly, but why should you pay attention to him? He's only a billionaire. Beware the man on the white horse. He already identified him as a current usurper in the White House. So we're going to talk about things tonight that you've got to get a grasp on. And I'll hit the bottom line right from the beginning, and then I'm going to turn it immediately over to V. God bless you, V. The point that everyone is missing is we're not approaching the end times. We're in them. We're not approaching the financial apocalypse or the revealing. We're in it. And you can stay tied to your own paradigm until you're blue in the face, but the day will come very quick. I asked Doug earlier today, I said, Doug, ask your wife, ask those around you what you would do if you go to sleep on a Friday, you wake up on a Monday, your bank account is closed because there's been a cyber attack. You absolutely have no access to credit. Credit cards are done. Your bank account is shut. All that you have is what you have in your pocket or the precious metals you bought. What could you do? How long could you live? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have been in this world for 4 decades, and the standard of, well, you can't eat gold, well, I got to tell you something. God himself set up just weights and measures. The weights and measures of the living God were accepted from the beginning of time, even from Babylon. There are financial records dealing with gold and silver and the ratio of one to another. When you mess up the measurement, God says that diverse measures are an abomination. And what we now have is a world that has been engineered to financially crash. Everything that is denominated in paper, everything that is of real value is either pledged or securitized or owned by somebody other than you think it. Even the people who think they own their property, own their farm, that's only until the authorities come with a bigger gun and want what you've got. It's been since time began that those with power seek to seize the power. Jim Rogers, beware the man on the white horse. He said as far back as ancient times, whenever civilizations fell into great crisis, people in desperation have almost invariably turned to a single individual who promised them better times. There are people on the internet talking about the white dragons. They're talking about a global reset. That's all horse manure. It will come at the most expensive price anybody could ever imagine. It will be the cost of your eternal soul. Everything out there is pledged, and if you can't touch it, you don't own it. Tonight before we went on, I got, again, ludicrous emails. I'm not going to burden you with them, but I want you to go tonight, and Doug and I and Joe will listen to the things that God has placed on your heart because you've been so far ahead, and I want you basically just to hit them. And when I say that, with the bottom line from your sources, God has given you favor, God has raised you up, and God has released you. Go ahead, my brother.
Amen. Well, God, it's great to be back. It's wonderful, and I think the last time that I was on, one of the things I said was, I'm very, very leery about July, and I felt very strongly that there was going to be some massive things occurring in July, and sure enough, you take a step back and you look at what happened just within the last 30 days. It has been monumental, to say the least. You've had a stock market that has continued to fluctuate. You had a large bond sell-off. You had you had Bernanke, for all intents and purposes, being fired, right, where he's like admitting to step down. We've had massive news coming out of the Eurozone with Germany, with Deutsche Bank, with so many things that were occurring. The faith and full trust in the U.S. bond market now is at risk, alongside the Japanese. So many things have happened within July, and I felt very strongly that July was the month of setup, where things are going to start accelerating. And from here on out, we're no longer on the slow train to collapse. We're no longer on the slow train to financial servitude over here. We are right now on the bullet train, and this train is going hyper. It's getting very fast, very quickly. We've seen so much scandals upon scandals with this administration. So it's been very, very news heavy. You've seen the gold beat down. You've seen the resets with the central banks, with the bullion banks going long on precious metals. We've seen massive amounts of gold and silver all flowing towards the east, going into Southeast Asia and in the Asian economies where they're buying it up feverishly. And you know what? Every single time that me and Steve were on, we're telling you people, get gold, get silver, get it while you can. And sure enough, this is what's occurring. We've seen so much happen, so much occur, and I'm just flabbergasted. And if you had an opportunity to go to Steve's website and look at the alerts that I posted up, especially that alert where I gave a vision that I had, and it was a vision on 90 days. And I think I had that vision July 8th at around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning. And it was so vivid and so clear. And I saw images of chaos. I saw images of gas stations listing the price of gas at $15 a gallon. I've seen chaos in New York City, people running around in absolute mayhem, cities on fire, martial law declared, the world economic crisis in full fruition, people stupefied as to what to do next or how they're going to get out of this situation. I've seen lines and lines of people waiting online to get food. And on top of all this, the next immediate imagery I've seen was a sky full of drones, was basically the FEMA armored personnel carriers, men dressed in black uniforms with black helmets. And I feel very strongly the voice of the Lord telling me, what do you think all this is for? 90 days. And that's when I wrote down that alert, because when you look at 90 days, folks, 90 days from here, okay, you are looking at basically October. And isn't that amazing that so many things have happened in October? That in 1929, and when I wrote this down in that alert, I had no idea. But that in 1920, and I forgot about it, but in 1929, the collapse occurred in October. A lot of sources that are the top-level economic sources that I've consulted with, they feel strongly about an October, November end to this whole thing, because now it has gone past the point of ridiculous. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a client of mine, and Rick, if you're listening, this goes out to you, buddy. But, one of the questions a lot of people have are, apart from the fact that, is this a cycle? Is this something that's going to be different? And one of the things I said is, you don't have an economy. I'm going to repeat that again. You do not. In the world today, amongst the Western powers, including Japan, you do not have an economy. When Jim Rogers, a man that I respect greatly, said that it is all artificial, okay, he's absolutely right. This is what I've been saying. This is what Steve's been saying. This is what Doug and Joe's been saying. This is what a lot of people have been saying. It is artificial. When you have a central bank that is the primary driver of your stock market, when you have a central bank that is the primary buyer of your treasuries, and when you have a central bank that is the primary sustainer of your real estate market, my friends, you do not have an economy. You have a dilapidated house of cards. And this is what you have not only in the United States, but also in Europe and as well as in Japan. This is the problem that we are facing as a civilization, because now all the central banks, the ECB, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, and the Federal Reserve, the four horsemen of economic apocalypse, are the primary driver of all economic activity in the world today. And when these central banks, that last month in July, we're still in July, I'm sorry, I keep calling it last month, I'm on my head in August already, but in a few weeks ago, when the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, put out their annual report, and in that annual report, they are recommending that all the member central banks stop stimulating. Think about that, folks. Think about that. Ben Bernanke a few weeks ago went on TV and said, we're going to stop tapering. He just briefly mentioned it, said we might. And then what happened? Oh, the stocks took a plunge. While the rest of the world was looking at the stocks, one thing that a lot of people have missed was the dollar. The dollar tanked like you would not believe, just for that instance. And it just shows you how fragile, how hair-triggered we are in this country, in this quote-unquote economy we're living in. So much has occurred in July. So much has been revealed in July. And then in tonight's broadcast, I want to try my best to paint a picture for you guys, to show you in detail how we got here. When I was a young trader back in 2005, I was under the tutelage of that time of a gentleman from South Africa. I'm not going to name him because then I'll give it away too quickly. But this man was the #1 strategic metals trader in the world. He was so good he retired at the age of 30. Till this day, he is called by the House and the Senate to go forth and testify upon markets and commodities. So when he took me under his tutelage to head up strategic metals in this European commodity house that I worked for, and I handled the logistics, the refining process, every aspect of the trade, from the ground to the market, from Zimbabwe to South Africa, trading it through Zurich and through the Netherlands. The man would always tell me something, and him as well as the cohorts and the men that were in the circles that he rolled with. And the thing that he always said is, V, your country is bankrupt, and they would laugh. And a young trader like myself, I never understood, what do you mean we're bankrupt? And he would always smile at me and said, one day you'll understand. And sure enough, folks, those words ring true more than ever. Some of you might be thinking that we've been bankrupt as a nation. Oh, maybe in the last 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. But what these men were talking about, these cadre of elites, these power brokers of the world, no, this bankruptcy, what these men are talking about, this going into receivership that these men laughed about over cocktails, goes much farther back than the mere 15 or 20 years. It goes way back. And tonight's broadcast, I'm going to paint a picture for you guys of how we got here. Because this country's history from the beginning has been a history of the struggle against the bankers. Behind every human tragedy in the last 300 years, there has been a banker behind it. In the great deal of human sufferings, just in the last 100 years, there has been a group of bankers behind it. These are the men that are above your military-industrial complex. These are the men situated and seated above your politicians and elected officials. These are the men that are in charge of your media. These are the men who steer nations, who fund both sides, who direct and manipulate the outcome of each and every event. And you will see tonight, folks, by the grace of Almighty God, that the hand, the invisible hand of these men working in the background since the time of this country's birth till today. And that's the one thing that I want you guys to realize, and that's the one thing we're going to go into. Steve, you want to say something?
Amen, V. Thank you very much, by the way. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report, the exclusive interview with Steve Quayle and V, the guerrilla economist. I tell you what, it is so important what you said, V. I didn't mean to interject here, Steve, but I got to tell you something. Everything, and this is something I had a conversation with an intelligence insider just before the show, who said that the lie is so big, and everything you just said, honest to goodness, everything you just said could have, the conversations could have been interchanged. It is that big. We are living the lie, a lie people are not seeing. In fact, Syria, Libya, the Arab Spring, if you look at the reasons behind it, it's not military necessarily. It is a banking instituted operation by the very people you're talking about. Steve, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Jesus made it really clear that the love of money, not money, the love of money is the root of all evil. I've also said the control of money is the control of all evil. When I made this statement years ago, this is what the Lord has prompted me to say, and I'm going to say it. He said, tell my people tonight, Steve, and listen, there are thousands of people who are interceding for me, and God bless each and every one of you. God bless each and every one of you, because that's the reason that the Lord has called me to be a watchman. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm just doing what He's called me to do. He said, tell them that the new revelations coming out are of my doing. You know, Doug, I get a kick out of the fact that people are trying to claim that Snowden's a traitor. Of course, the people that are trying to claim him a traitor are the ones that got caught with their not only hands in the cookie jar, but their pants down, and they're caught with their pants down in compromising situations. The Lord God of heaven, hallowed be His name, declared years ago, before America is destroyed, He's going to reveal the sins of the leaders to the people and the people's sins before their God. The two greatest sins in the body of Christ right now are apathy and indifference. Apathy and indifference lead to cowardice. But what I'm seeing, and V will address this tonight, I am seeing such financial cowardice where people tell me they've got tens of millions of dollars, and literally they do, at risk, and yet they're saying, I'm too afraid to do anything. And I said, every day you do nothing means you're going to lose it. And I'm not kidding, Doug. People with great wealth, and I'm not talking, this is important to understand. People who have been given great wealth don't understand that God holds them, if they're Christians, responsible and accountable for what we do. It's a parable of the talents. The talent isn't whether you can sing. The talent isn't whether you can write. The talent isn't anything more related than that God has said, I'm going to give you unrighteous mammon to see how you handle it in order to be able to give you the true riches. That's the parable. That is the word of the Lord. Those are object lessons for us to learn. It is absolutely astonishing to me that the people of God who go to church on Sunday still go to the devil's cauldron on Monday through Friday and live in a world of artificial reality, virtual reality, paper money, credits, electrons, photons, and morons, okay? That's the way Pastor Langford would say it, morons, because if you're living in a virtual world where your wealth, you can't eat electrons. You can't eat neutrons, and you certainly can't eat protons. Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, those of you on the West Coast eating seafood are going to be eating more than you can imagine. The old adage is that you might glow in the dark. Well, you may not glow in the dark, but the stuff in the ocean that's affecting the plankton and the food chain is not only glowing in the dark, it's mutating in the dark. And just as things in the creation of the world that God set barriers for, God made gold and silver. From the beginning, He said the gold of Ophir is good. And this is what V's people who he has been placed in contact, these are movers and shakers, ladies and gentlemen. I know their names, not because I would have known them outside of V telling me, but also some of them are recognizable when he tells you. God is giving you behind the veil look. Tonight, if any of you go to bed and send me an email tomorrow and say, what should I do with my IRA, 401k, defined benefit plan, and you have not done anything yet with it, then I would say to you that you are already sleeping in the dust of the earth, because you do not understand the brevity, you do not understand the danger, you do not understand the flood that's coming against you. And I know people that are prayer warriors and intercessors, and when they ask the Lord, what should I do about my retirement? He says to them, don't worry, it won't matter if you stay where you're at. And then he says, why will you perish, O man? So, ladies and gentlemen, personal accountability and responsibility. V is absolutely sounding the clarion call. I know of no one else in the world, and I know a lot of people, I know of no one else, and it's interesting, Doug. They said that imitation is the highest form of flattery. Well, outright intellectual theft seems to be the higher form of flattery. Because didn't you tell me, Doug, that you've seen posts where when anybody says, well, Quayle was right or V was right, they automatically want to brand that person as a crazy or a follower? Tell me, everyone listening to this broadcast, who was it that told you about the Japanese yen, V? Who was it that told you about Deutsche Bank, V? Who was it that told you 5-7 years ago, whatever it was, longer than 7 years ago, that God was going to reveal the sins of leaders? And now you have secret meetings of former presidents and the current president and Africa. And let me just tell you this. These guys are not having normal bowel function because they know what's getting ready to come out. That's why the paratroopers, the Russians, that's why the Chinese, everybody in the higher echelons knows what's getting ready to happen to the United States of America, and you cannot blame those who have loaned money to the United States and taken collateral positions, because God is absolutely going to judge and punish the Western financial system, because it's built on unjust measures, it's built on death, it's built on war, it's built on nothing but bloodshed, and it has been nothing but a machine devouring the people, the planet, and that blessing that God intended for his people when they walked in his way. It should make everybody weep on their face before God that 80% of Americans no longer can pay their bills. It should make everybody cry out, what went wrong? I'll tell you what went wrong. NAFTA, CAFTA, it became the SHAFTA. I remember I was one of the first guys that even made that thing rhyme, and that was, 10 years ago, at least 15 years ago, whenever. And the point being is this. Tonight you're getting a behind-the-scenes view. And V, I haven't had a chance to talk to you, Doug or Joe. Before I went on the show tonight, I got a call from someone, and I do not know the person's name. I know the person that called me. I don't know the name. But he said he's assigned to a missile wing. And they've been good friends for all this years. And he came into my friend's store and simply said, it's later than you think. It's never been this dangerous. We hear of the Russians. We hear of the Chinese moving. We hear of the challenges. We hear a president claiming that Ho Chi Minh was reading Thomas Jefferson and was a follower of the Founding Fathers. Not one of the Founding Fathers killed 500,000 of their own people or killed 60,000 Americans. And still today, veterans from the Vietnam War, God bless each and every one of you, walk around with wounded hearts, wounded bodies, missing limbs, minds so tormented, tortured, poisoned by Agent Orange. And if that doesn't make you vomit, I suggest that you don't even know what the word living means. That should make you furious that a group of men that laid down their lives, and what V's going to lay out to you is this. They believe they were fighting for liberty. It was all a mind control experiment to control not only the population of America, but to get control of the drug trade. Am I not right there, V?
You're absolutely right. Vietnam is just one of the many banker wars. Okay, the first banker war. Let me tell you something about this. The last 300 or so years, we've had a creature emerge from the abyss. And that creature is the banker. He is the one, and his method, his primary method is fractional reserve lending, okay? That's his primary method. And now, people would always say to me, well, V, wasn't that something that was created by the Rothschilds? No. It actually was created by King Henry V. All right? The first instance of fractional lending was created by Henry, who took all the gold from all the goldsmiths, because back then merchants would keep their gold with the goldsmiths and their silver with the goldsmiths, and the goldsmith would just give them a certificate. Some goldsmiths were a little dishonest, and they gave out more certificates than they had gold, okay? But the greatest offender of all this was King Henry, I think V. And what he did was he confiscated all the gold because, here he is, he's in an expansionary war, and then started says that, he's going to pay back everybody's debt, and wrote a whole bunch of certificates that he didn't have the gold to back up that claim. Eventually, suffice to say, to make a long story short, he paid back all the gold. But that spurred the idea to Mr. Rothschild, and he became your first real multinational banker. And how did he do that? Well, he started banking left and right. We all know the story, how he, he had one of his spies follow Napoleon into battle. And then when he lost the Battle of Waterloo, he said, the spy, responded back saying that Napoleon, the Russians won, and what happened was the spy went back, the stock market in England crashed, and then Rothschild bought up everything on the penny on the dollar. But the thing is this, folks. Rothschild and the whole banking conglomerate of the Rothschild family exists and has always existed under the auspices of the British Royal Crown. When we talk about, when traders, we called Wall Street as young traders, we called it the Terror Dome. And we always say, welcome to the Terror Dome. And that's, that was the melee where the world traded. But the real traders, we always knew, the real brokers knew, the real powerhouse in finance was not Manhattan, was not Wall Street, New York City. No. The real powerhouse in finance is the city in London. Okay? We are under a British banking model system. It is a British banking system that we have been fighting in this country since 1776. How do we come to a revolutionary war? Most people would think that it was over tea, or a tax on tea, and there's no taxation without representation. Folks, it was much more than that. The Revolutionary War was the first banker war fought in the New World, okay? The British banksters made it economically impossible for those that are in the colonies to live in peace, that they rebelled. And it was these banksters that they were the main agitators of what occurred that caused America to have this revolutionary war, and eventually we won our freedom. If you look at the letters that men like Jefferson, Madison, Franklin, Washington, what these men wrote about, you notice that there's a common theme. They are wary of central bankers. They are wary of international bankers. They are wary of these money changers, okay? So when the Brits, when these banksters lost the New World, because there was a lot of investment going into America, because believe it or not, folks, they thought it is. You got to understand, these banksters, at the low to mid level, these guys are ruthless. They are a soulless creature, and I've been around some of them. They have no loyalty to country, to culture, tradition, borders, language. It doesn't matter. All that matters is profit. They have no God. Their God is mammon. But above that, okay, that's also what I've been exposed to. When I saw some of when I was working as a broker for another firm, when I saw the chairman and individuals chanting Babylonian prayers before the market opened, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. A couple of years ago, as a young broker, I just thought you guys were a bunch of atheistic, nihilistic, dirtbags who just want to make a buck. But now I'm saying, wait a minute, at the higher level, there's some sort of a religion here. There's some sort of a belief here. Folks, these banksters at the top level have a special belief that Amaruka, and that's the name of this country, it's the land of the serpent, has a very special place in their heart. They believe that this mystical land is theirs. So when we first landed, when the early colonists first landed here, there was a great deal of tremendous investment by the money bankers to get a foothold here. And when that did not occur, what happened? Well, they came at us a second time. And that, friends, was the War of 1812. When we lost Washington, we lost the White House, the Brits burned it down to the ground, and then we still repelled them. Okay? So again, the banksters failed. Then the banksters realized that they couldn't get a hold of this country by force. Because they couldn't do it by force, they have agreed to do it by subterfuge. Fast forward, okay, to the mid-1800s, right before the Civil War. You know, oftentimes people ask me, well, V, we need a Reagan to turn this country around. And I look at people dead in the eye and say, no. You don't need a Reagan. Reagan had his puppet masters, especially his chief of staff, who was a Goldman Sachs plant. Now, what we need in this country today to turn this thing around, apart from Almighty God, is you need a man like Andrew Jackson. Now, people would say, you know, there's a lot of history books written about Andrew Jackson, but I will tell you something from the bankster's perspective. He was one of the most feared men because, believe it or not, Jackson was very economically astute. He was very smart. He studied the booms and the busts that happened right after the War of 1812 because we went through a boom cycle and bust cycle. He understood the concept and how the currencies would work and how the banknotes would work. And he went through and he studied economics through what's called the currency school at that time. And it's from him and his group that they were called the Jacksonians. And these men, what do? They fought against the first bank of the United States. I'm sorry, the second bank of the United States, because the first bank failed, the first attempt to set up a central bank. So the second bank of the United States, he fought against. Nicholas Bedell was the central banker that he went up against. And they defeated him. And Jackson had multiple assassination attempts on his life. And towards the end of his life, not only did he get America out of all the debt that was poured onto her by the bankers because of the wars, not only did he balance the budget, on his deathbed, it was said that somebody asked him, what's your greatest achievement? He said, I killed the bank. His greatest achievement. And God bless him for that, because he understood. Just like Tom Jefferson, who said that if you allow these banks to control the currency and the money of this country, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will rob you of the land that your fathers have fought and died for. And so Jackson understood that. So fast forward to the third banker war, which was the Civil War. And folks, people tell me, well, you know, you need a central bank. No, you don't. How do we operate prior to 1913? How do we operate prior to 1861? You know, people say, well, you know, some of these historians will tell you, they'll give this brainwash where you've had banks and they print their own banknotes and, you know, and they had less gold than the notes that they wrote. And they couldn't redeem these notes, so again, doing the whole fractional reserve, you know, the song and dance. Because that's exactly what's happening, folks, because there's something about these banksters. They can't get away from printing paper. It's just something that's genetic in them. They just can't get away from it. So even in the midst of all this, you had banks fail. The beauty of it is the banks would fail. Their assets were liquidated. Okay? That's the beauty of it. We don't have that system anymore. All right? We have too big to fail banks these days. So, but in the 1800s, there was a bank in New England, and during the time of the other bust cycle that occurred in the 1850s and early into the 1860s before the Civil War, not a single New England bank went under because of a bank called the Suffolk Bank. And the Suffolk Bank is proof positive that a private bank working in a pure free market system is safer, more efficient, and more profitable for the public to use. It was the perfect clearing bank. It worked better than any other bank in the region, any other bank in the country. That immediately before, as soon as the Civil War started, what did the banksters do? Well, in 1861, they killed the Suffolk Bank. How did they do it? They passed a law in 1861, right before the Civil War kicked off, the Banking System Act of 1861, which prevented any bank from issuing its own note redeemable in specie, which is either gold or silver. Setting up, that Banking Act of 1861 set us up for a pure central bank fiat concept that was implemented in December 23rd, 1913. So as soon as 1861 rolled around, Civil War gets kicked off. How the heck do we fund the Civil War? Well, Lincoln and the Treasury Secretary at that time, Salmon P. Chase, they issue greenbacks. And as soon as the greenbacks hit the market, they become worthless almost. They're not trading there. They're very volatile. We understand we've got a war going on. But as soon as the war was settled, the central bankers, and the funny thing with Salmon is this, Salmon P. Chase was the Jacksonian. He understood currency. He understood the dangers of these banksters. But yet, at some point in his career, he became a turncoat. The banksters got a hold of him, paid him off, and made him into the Secretary of Treasury under Lincoln. And under Chase, right after the war was over, the greenback started falling rapidly. It started depreciating rapidly. Inflation started growing up. You know what Chase did? And I want to know, and let me know, folks, if this sounds familiar. The first thing Chase did, guess what he did? He started blaming gold. He started to blame the gold and silver speculators. And so, he tried to destroy, personally, the gold market. Gold is like kryptonite to these banksters because it forces them, it adheres them to very strict and stringent standards and measures. And that's something they can't have because power corrupts, folks, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, that whole opposite, Chase tried multiple times to destroy the gold market. He tried so much that in the end, Chase was eventually booted out of his office. He was fired. They kicked him out. Told him to go take a hike. And in fact, it was, and I want you to listen very carefully, it was in fact a Republican senator from that time who nailed it. He said this. He said, his name is Jacob Collamer, the senator from Vermont. And his words ring so true today because of the economic situation that we're in. And he said this. He said, gold does not fluctuate in price because they gamble in it. The fluctuation is not in gold. The fluctuation in price is in the currency. The currency fluctuates. And it's this fluctuation that is utterly beyond the control of individuals. Think about that for a second, folks. This is why V has always told you, buy gold, don't worry about the spot price. Buy silver, don't worry about the spot price. If it's up, buy it. If it's low, buy it. If it's medium, buy it. If it's a good day, the birds are singing and the sun is shining, buy it. Because it's not the metal that's fluctuating. I need you guys to get that. I need you to understand that. It is the currency that's fluctuating.
If I can interject something here, V, and I apologize for interrupting, but I got to tell folks, on HomelandSecurityUS.com, if you just simply look on the second page, there is, you've got to understand this, because 99% of the questions I'm getting by email right now can be answered in this one video. It's on the second page of our website. Is simply this. If you scroll down to the bottom of the second page, money versus currency, understanding the difference. It's a 28-minute video. It's really simple. Money versus currency. There is a difference, folks. Please, all of your questions that we're getting here, what V's talking about, can be answered. So money versus currency, understanding the difference. You can even look it up on YouTube. It's a 28-minute video. But I just want to interject that, V.
No problem. No problem anytime. But that's the situation, folks. So the Civil War goes off. The banksters try to get a central bank up and running again. Doesn't really work. You have a greenback issue, massive inflation, massive unemployment, and then you get the industrial age. And what do these banksters do? Well, they need to set up a central bank. All right? So they do it. They bought out Nelson Aldrich, senator from the great state of New York, Paul Warburg, and we all know the whole. You can look it up yourself on the internet, though. I'm not going to waste my time on the creation of the Fed. You can look it up, the whole Jekyll Island thing. Then they create the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve needs to create more power. How do you do that? Well, what does the Fed do? They create boom and bust cycles, just like the first bank of the United States, just like the second bank of the United States, just like every other central bank. Okay? They do another boom bust cycle. They print a ridiculous amount of cheap currency and cheap credit, and then they contract the monetary supply, causing all these bubbles that they've created to explode. This is why those who are in the Kool-Aid and drinking party that is partying it up on Wall Street had a heart attack when the Fed chairman said we're thinking about tapering. It is the same thing. So when you stimulate and you put this flood of cheap money out there, you inadvertently or advertently create many, many bubbles. The problem with these bubbles is that the moment you begin to taper, the moment you decide to tighten the reins a little bit, those bubbles pop. And what happens to all those wealth? No, folks, the wealth that is created by these bubbles, the assets that are propped up by these bubbles, they don't disappear. No. This gets siphoned into the banksters. So they need to create turmoil. What do? Well, they dragged us into the first banker world war, World War I. They tried to push hard. They created a League of Nations. They said millions of people died. They did. It was horrible, they said, and it was. And then their solution was to ramrod a world government down our throats at that time. And didn't really fly. League of Nations fell apart. It just became a debate society, and it had no legs. But the Federal Reserve became stronger. And then in 1929, they contracted the monetary supply again, this time causing a massive, massive crash. And to the stock market crash in 1929. So what was the first? Again, you're seeing these Hegelian problem reaction solution that many of the listeners are familiar with. So what was the Fed's solution to the problem they created? In 1933, get rid of gold. Take America, reevaluate everything. And in 1933, folks, when I was hanging out years ago, and these guys, these top traders, these top brokers, these top fund managers, these top guys, these power brokers who ran the show, when they talked about America was bankrupt, this is what they're talking about. Because in 1933, okay, that was, believe it or not, not only the fact that the gold was confiscated, but 1933 kicked off the fact that we, as a country, went into bankruptcy. The Emergency Banking Act was passed. Okay. The Emergency Banking Act, Statute 1, Public Law 89-719, which was declared by President Roosevelt, that the U.S. was bankrupt and insolvent. We went into receivership. Okay. Also, another thing happened. Not only were we bankrupted, folks. You know, today people ask me all the time, well, what about my mortgage? What about my land? What about this? You don't own it. You could have a paid-off mortgage. You could have a paid-off piece of property. And people are like, well, if I pay it off, don't I own it? No. Well, stop paying your property tax, and you'll find out real quick who owns your property. You see, folks, in 1933, we lost something as a nation. We lost our property rights. That was the end of all allodial titles. Allodial titles is something that our founding fathers have set up for this republic. In fact, the old American axiom was not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No, no, no. The original mantra, folks, was life, liberty, and the ownership of property. The government existed for the enforcement of contracts and the preservation of property rights. And in 1933, we've lost that. It was the end of all allodial titles. And allodial means total and absolute claim and ownership to the land without any taxation, without any fees. It's totally gone. At that point in 1933, when you read closer to how the bankers set it up, they also made sure that all the governmental offices and the departments are now owned outright by the bankers. So if the government is owned by the bankers and we went into receivership then, how does the government function? Simple. The government functions simply on a War Powers Act. People ask me, well, V, what do you mean by that? Most of you that are listening to my voice who are 60 and even 70 years old, folks, let me tell you something. This country has been at war for your whole entire life. Think about it. For as long as you have been alive, we have been at war. World War I, World War II, which set us up for Korea, all the assets and armaments didn't just get shipped back to the continental U.S., folks. No, no, no. It was stationed offshore. And the banksters set up Vietnam, which was to corner the drug trade. What do you think we went into Afghanistan for? Freedom? Tim Osman, a.k.a. Osama bin Laden? No. Opium. What was the biggest mistake the Taliban did? Hiding Osama bin Laden? No, 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 no. The biggest mistake, there's two big mistakes that the Taliban did. Number one, they rejected the Caspian pipeline for oil because the banksters need to have oil. And the oil companies and cartels function. All the oilmen function underneath the banksters. Same thing with the military industrialists. The second big mistake the Taliban did is they started hacking down and cutting down all the opium trees, all the opium plants. Not trees, I'm sorry, but the opium plants. Couldn't have that. So we went in, and what is the first thing that happens? Well, Afghanistan today accounts for 93 or 95% of all the world's heroin. That's what I call spreading freedom, folks. That's what your taxpayer dollars are doing. And in fact, your taxpayer dollars, every penny of your taxpayer dollar goes back to paying the interest that this country owes to the Federal Reserve. So when this economy finally goes bust, you will have nothing. Your house that you live in is imaginary. The land you live in is imaginary. It will be collateralized. In fact, it is already being collateralized because the Fed has made the U.S. bond and the U.S. dollar a worthless asset. What do you think we're going to be giving the Chinese and the Russians? Your land and your houses. That's what they're going to do. And due to the receivership, the never-ending borrowing in the United States in order to exist has been a perpetual War Powers Act. I want you to think about this, folks. If you look at Roosevelt's executive orders, Executive Order 6073, Executive Order 6102, Executive Order 6111, Executive Order 6260, all this was giving the bankers the rights to the land. The same banksters who set up the United Nations in New York City. The same banksters who are funding what you're going to see with this economic collapse, folks, is the biggest land grab in history. That's right. It's not just the subprime mortgages. It's not just a guy who's struggling to keep his house, struggling to pay his mortgage payment. No. It's going to be your very home. Because your home and the land that it's on is going to be seized because it is collateral. You, my friend, people ask me, well, let me ask you this. Look, here's something for the bankers to you. Do you know what those FEMA camps are for? Do you know what those camps are about? Of course, there's going to be red lists, blue lists, and yellow lists. But you know there's another type of camp, which are work camps. You know what those work camps are for, folks? It's for you. That means one day you're going to get up, a van's going to pull up, it's going to take you to one work site, it's going to take your wife to another work site. Oh, and it's not going to pull up in your house, by the way. It's going to pull up at that camp you're staying in. It's going to take you to a work site. Your wife will be in another, and your children will be in another. And you're going to work to pay back the national debt that you owe, or at least what the bankers think you owe. This is something that the bankers want to do to you guys. You are the collateral. You. Your house. Forget the house. I don't even care about the house. The land that it's on is the collateral. That's what they're going to do. This is what's being given over to the Russians, over to the Chinese, over to certain Europeans as collateral, because we are a captured operation, because we are in receivership. And now we can no longer be at war perpetually because we're going broke. That's where we are today. Steve or Doug, if you guys want to say anything.
Steve, go ahead.
Okay, well, here's what has to settle in tonight. It will be a literal act of God to grant wisdom. Pastor Langford quoted it yesterday in the book of James, last night when we were on, that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men generously. The number one question I get asked every day, what about my mortgage? What about my credit card bill? What about everything? Pastor Langford gave almost a year ago the word of the Lord, where the United States has been in bondage, and bondage is debt, and debt is bondage. Now we're going into captivity. What V is laying out to everyone is the plan. You are not your own. You have a choice to stay in their system or yield to Jesus, because you're bought with a price. And it's so hard. I pray that people understand this, Doug, that you become chattel. Your person. And you think I'm crazy? Somebody's already got my DNA, and I'm sure someone owns a patent to my DNA. But I would just like to remind them that when the children of Israel were eating manna, which was angel food, they started complaining about the same old thing. And then God sent them quail, spelled differently, but they vomited. They wanted meat. What I've learned in having to gauge what I share or time what I say is that most people simply cannot digest the meat of the word. They're still suckling. I know people that are basically Christians. They've got growing children living at home, and they're still breastfeeding. They're 34 and 36. So I don't mean literally. I mean figuratively. The point is that God is saying, grow up. The whole purpose of last night, Doug, ties into tonight perfectly, because it's not just a spiritual issue, it's a physical issue. It is the issue of whose property are you? You know, the thing that is critical for people to understand is this. The foreign troops brought into this country are here to enforce under the rule of world law to basically collect on their dues. Just like the mafia sends the boys out, when you borrow money from them and don't repay, you get something broken. Well, in this case, the whole country has been whored out, W-H-O-R-E-D, sold out, betrayed out, given up, given out, given over, and very soon it's going to hit home. And these being kind, the idea of men and women living together in the camps, you, ladies and gentlemen, hear me. Take this to the Lord in prayer. You are collateral. You have become chattel. You young ladies that focus on Facebook, or all you that are building your own Central Intelligence Agency dossiers, all of you that are children of the Stasi, all of you that basically think that this technology is such a great thing, you're already hooked into the Borg. And by being hooked into the Borg, you are being specifically brain drained and brain trained away from the truth. V just laid out to you what the banker's end game is. As one very wealthy man once said to me, he said, Steve, he said, after a point, even Ted Turner said this, he said, power's better than sex. Well, this guy told me point blank, that's, by the way, a quotation of Ted Turner's. This guy said, Steve, when you get all the money in the world, he said, the only thing you wake up for is more power. He said, it's like a bloodlust. I said, so when I see a story on Drudge today that the Pentagon wants people to listen to them to the way things are, not read the headlines on Drudge, I said, and I wrote this on one of my commentaries, just in one sentence, that's like asking a vampire to give up drinking blood and they're going to give you red Kool-Aid in spite of the blood. Guess what? Vampires drink blood. The point is that what you have just heard, ladies and gentlemen, is what is in play now. When we come back from the break, Doug, we'll take this even further, because we're in a critical mode. V's time frame, Pastor Langford's time frame, everybody's time frame. And look, they're not setting a day or an hour. What they're saying is everything is in preparation. Everything in martial law has been kicked up. When you got missile guys that are in the silos ready to launch nukes, worried and saying their goodbyes, something's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you act, my guess is, and look, I can be wrong, my guess is that the time to act will be taken from you if you wait much longer than 3 to 4 weeks. So please, when we come back from the break, we'll get into specifics. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, V.
All
Thank
right,
you, Joe.
Yeah. A fantastic first hour, folks. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 29th day of July, 2013. Very special guest, Mr. Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com. V, the guerrilla economist, who, by the way, the last time he was on, caused many, many people to quote him, and also he's quoted in several from the Economist to other publications on the internet. So it's extremely important news. It's tomorrow's headlines today. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us. And by the way,
and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this special Monday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We are joined by the guerrilla economist V, along with Steve Quayle at stevequayle.com, and tonight talking about the 4 horsemen, or as Steve said, the 4 monkeys of the economic apocalypse. The fractional reserve banking, the property ownership was hit on the first hour, precious metals, the dollar. What a wonderful
informative first hour, absolutely. And I just want to say, folks, just going into this, if you look at, if you go back to look at what we saw or we heard from V the last time he was on, now has come to pass where many people are reporting on what V had reported earlier. So May 14th, when V was on, he was talking about the Deutsche Bank, for example, and wouldn't you know it, 2 months after he was on our show, now people are talking about Deutsche Bank. So it's 2 months ahead of the curve is what I'm trying to say. So with that, welcome, gentlemen.
Well, I'm glad to be back.
Steve, are you there, my friend? Well, V, again, congratulations on your foresight, because you saw perhaps that Max Kaiser was talking, he tweeted this past weekend, July 24th, I believe it was, about Deutsche Bank, when you, on May 14th of this year, were talking about Deutsche Bank. So, and also, I don't know if you saw this or not, Jim Willie had written an extremely explosive article today about the extreme gold market, the very things you're talking about today, and of course you were talking about months ago. So you're way ahead of the curves, and people must appreciate what you're saying. Steve, welcome back.
Well, I am back, Doug, and V, God bless you. The thing that is amazing to me is that very soon the people of God are going to have to take their own knives, forks, and spoons and stand on the provision of the Word of God. I'm going to say that again. Some of you have been spoon-fed and you don't know how to eat your own meat. You don't know how to gather the power of God through the spoken word of God and through the revealed word of God. And, Doug, I got to tell you something. If it weren't for the intercessors, I would have come on your show tonight and said, and I've quit before, I am absolutely through with the vomitous character of some of these entities that listen to me and question whether I'm really a man of God because my daughter sings country music. I was so furious. I want to say this because I've got to get off my heart. Some of you who have spoken every form of evil against my daughter and attacked me, you don't even have a clue what an amazing woman she is. You have called her everything that you could possibly defame a woman for. And granted, country western music may not be your thing. She is my daughter. I'm proud of her. And where the hell were all of you when she's singing for the mothers and the fathers that lost their sons and writing songs for all the servicemen who have paid the ultimate price? Or when she is brought up for the Commandant of the Marine Corps and he thanks her for what she's done? Or where were you? And I'm going to say this because I really don't give a darn anymore, Doug. I am sick and tired. V and I pour our guts out. We absolutely get trashed. We get, accused of everything. And I'm going to say this. Every one of you that has judged the same measure you have judged her with, so will you be judged. I'm proud of my daughter. I love my daughter. I will do anything to protect my daughter. That doesn't mean I condone the lyrics to her songs, but I stand with her, knowing that I've prayed her this far. I'll bring her through. God knows that she loves Jesus. It was interesting because when Pastor Bruce was giving Stephanie the word of the Lord, I thought, Lord, those are the same words because she told me and he told me. Those are the same words that there's no way in the world anyone human could have known the promises of God. So, sure, does every parent want to make different choices for their kids? And, Doug, I had to repent because there were some people that if I could have got my hands around them, I can tell you this. You touch me, I'll turn the other cheek. You start accusing and making accusations from hell, and the Lord God of heaven rebuke you, and you men that are absolutely, she's wearing a T-shirt and blue jeans, and you're telling me she's dressing this or that. I called Stephanie, and she said, Dad, don't worry about it. You know what they say about you, too. I thought, now, she's reacting or acting better than I am. And I'm just saying this, Doug. Look, I'm the one that gets the death threats. I'm the one, and V knows what it's like when his apartment building complex burns. Did it happen by accident? You're the one that's throwing down. You know what goes on. And I'm saying this. I'm saying only one guy basically got what was going on today in my heart. And thank you, my brother, that sent that to me. Because if I would have had my way, I would have said, and I'm sorry to do this tonight, V, I would have said, you know what? I'm through, people. You've heard me pray. You've heard me intercede. You've heard me weep. You've heard me call upon God to save you. I pour my heart out to try and get you out of harm's way. No matter what we do to try and help, there are those of you that are so hateful, so wicked, so baptized in battery acid, so insecure that all you got to do is judge everything. I've been accused of everything. I guess Stephanie's in the same boat now. Blessed she when all men, and all especially men. Those of you men that have a problem with lust, get over it, take it up with Jesus. But those of you that call and tell me or send me your emails, all I'll say is this: may God show you more mercy than you show anybody else. And I'm serious, Doug, unless God speaks to my heart, and really I'm beyond furious, okay? And I'm telling you, what we're telling you tonight, I'm going to shift back now. I'm going to get into the good Steve mode. No one in their right mind would put up with the crap that's been thrown at me because of my daughter. I love her. She's an amazing woman. She's absolutely got a call on her life. Sure, the devil's going to fight her too. But again, I'm saying this: to hell with you critics. May God judge you according to the same standard you judge. You don't know her. You certainly want to make sure you rub my nose in it and then sign off with the religious jargon. Go to hell, and I mean that. End of story. V, take it over. I'm sorry I had to dump because I just could not contain myself.
Yeah, just for V and for the listeners, I just got to say this, Steve. You got every right to be angry. There's a heck of a backstory to this. Let's just say this: that Steve has been put through the ringer of late with respect to his daughter. And you attack his family, you attack him, and we know how it is. And I just want to say to Steve, I believe the message has been given to those who need to hear that message. So thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for saying that, because there's a lot of evil out there, and our families are at risk as well. But God bless you, my friend. V, take it away.
Yeah, in New York, we call people like that haters. But one thing you got to understand is that haters don't really hate you. They hate themselves, because you're a reflection of what they wish to be. And that's the whole thing. And it's all this junk. I mean, I get emails. I've seen some of these things that people write. It's laughable. It's absolutely laughable. And sad that, people want to take his child. And that's just ridiculous. But, the hour of the time that we're living in is critical, and people need to understand. They need to focus their energies on what is being done, what is being said. They need to understand and look around at the world that's around them, because everything being said, not just by Steve and not only by me, but by so many individuals. We are painting not just a cacophony of sounds, but we are painting a picture. And the pieces of the puzzle is starting to come together. One thing that I highlighted was property rights, was the last thing I said. And property rights, folks, is important, because it is collateral. You're going to lose it. These things are all going to be at risk. And the thing that you have to understand is, when we say, hey, you need to put your wealth into a real, hard, tangible asset like gold and silver, it is simply because of the fact that that's where the elites are putting their money. It is simply to the fact that they don't want you with precious metals, because it allows you to be outside of their control. And that's the thing that you have to understand. And the way this country is going, folks, I really feel there's such an urgency in my heart. There's such an ache in my spirit. Because I truly believe that the next 80 days or so is going to be very critical. Because folks, there's nothing, the horsemen right now are riding, these financial apocalyptic horsemen, the 4 central banks that are propping this whole structure up. They're already fulfilling their purpose. Their first purpose was to gain control, and every single one of those 4 have achieved that. Their second purpose was to create bubbles and siphon wealth. They've done that. Their third purpose was to create market chaos and total dependency. They've done that. The final phase, folks, the final 2 phases are, number 1, be the primary driver and sustainer of the economy of each respective nation, and they've achieved that. And the final act is to cut it. The final act is to stop stimulating. And folks, this few weeks ago, the Bank of International Settlements has already given the order to stop. And then you hear Bernanke saying we're going to taper. And then you hear Draghi say that he's going to taper. And then you hear the head of the Bank of England saying the same thing. And Kuruda in Japan, the Bank of Japan, saying the same thing. We are in a very critical position, because right now things are so fragile economically, folks, that we can have a quote-unquote a false flag. We can have a cyber attack, which right now I believe that they'll probably try to blame it on the Chinese. And then they can roll out their control apparatus. This is what's happening. And I truly believe that if we continue to either A, act as business as usual, or B, say, I'm going to wake up and protest, and I'm starting a blog, and I'm going to go out and do this and that, we've missed the boat again. The only way that we can fix this as America, we got to repent. We have to come back. Now, you're hearing it from me. Yes, a former broker, a former trader, a one-time godless man telling you this. This country needs to get back to its roots. Its people need to change. Because we're seeing the final act of the final play being brought forth. And that's what I'm concerned about. This summer, we've seen what happened in July. August is going to be critical. Because August, you're going to have tons of earnings reports. Folks, just a few days ago, J.P. Morgan Chase, Blythe Masters, who I truly believe the woman is wholly half human. Blythe and J.P. Morgan just came forward with Jamie Dimon saying, hey, we want to get out of the commodities market. And they're dumping all their gold and silver. Folks, I told you, they don't have anything in their vault. I told you that whatever gold they had for a day or two was siphoned underneath the tunnel that connects across Liberty Street from the J.P. Morgan vault to the New York Fed vault. And this gold was repatriated to various countries that we owed it to, because these countries don't want to hold dollars. They are recalling. They're repatriating their gold. This is huge news. Underreported. So if J.P. Morgan, one of the three institutions, the other being Goldman Sachs and the Federal Reserve, who are the main players at suppressing precious metals. If one of the main players has decided, hey, we're not going to be selling commodities, we're going to get out of it, think of that news. Think of the magnitude of that information. What do they know that they want to cut their losses and get out? Because they understand that the house of cards is about to fall. Why? Why, as I'm speaking to you tonight, that there are executives like Diamond who are already making plans to move to a secondary location outside of New York? Why is it that the head of the CME is doing the same? Why are billionaires leaving this country? Why are political leaders who are set up to be in political offices in certain areas, in certain cities, making secondary plans? Because they understand that it's a sinking ship, that water has been torn into the hull and is going by compartment to compartment. Meanwhile, those who are on the very top decks, we're still in the swimming pools. They're still playing volleyball in the pool. They're still on the slip and slides. They're all having a party and a good time. Telling you that the economy is recovering, everything's wonderful, go back to sleep. This is the beginning, folks. July had massive information, massive news, massive issues, massive. August is going to be horrific. Wait till you hear the corporate earnings. Think about it. 101 million Americans on food stamps now, or getting some sort of food supplement. Think about it. From the government. Some sort of government had 101 million. Did you ever think you'd live to see the day? 4 out of 5 Americans guaranteed to go through economic hardship now. 4 out of 5. 80%. You are being sold down the river. And the next news, folks, the next news, watch in August as we go into September. Watch what happens to the dollar. Watch the news as the pressure mounts in the U.S. bond market. Japanese businessmen, Japanese investors, those who really know, they understand, they are quaking in their boots right now because they have no more credibility. The Bank of Japan, the Japanese bond market, no more credibility. That same pressure is coming to bear right now in America. And this late August into September, you're going to see that. You're going to see come September, you're going to see the dollar beginning to take that hit. You're going to see the currency war come full circle. You're going to see major happenings in Germany. September 23rd, mark it on your date. Actually, mark the 24th on your date. Right after the German elections. You will see what happens. You will see what happens. You will see a new realignment in Germany in its relationship to the rest of the European Union, because the Germans are not going to sit there and continue to bail out a bunch of losers. They're not going to do it. September 24th. So you're going to see from now until September, you're going to see massive things that are happening. A lot of this that's going to take place in the next 2 months have been planted. A lot of those seeds have been planted in July. They're going to be in full bloom by September. And folks, I think by October, November, we could be in the midst of an economic collapse, a false flag, or an all-out nuclear war. That's how critical things are. I've never in my life have I woken up in my own country and said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to leave. It's getting to that level where I'm looking at my family and I'm saying to myself, what the hell am I here for? Living in a house that I don't really own, on a piece of property that I don't really own. Think about it. This is what it's coming down to. This is how critical it is. And I'm sounding the trumpets now. That's where we are right now. Steve, Doug, or Joe?
Steve, go ahead and take it. Because
I'd like to say something that I think is critical that everyone understands, Doug. The World Court is already having their secret meetings. You don't have four of the former presidents of the United States and current president meeting in secret meetings after the Snowden revelation. I said to so many people who only mocked it, the name of America will become a hissing in the nations around us. Years ago, when Dmitry Duduman had the vision of the nations that would come against America, there were two that I believe God wouldn't let him know until the time, and those are Germany and France. You think Germany and France are nuclear powers that don't realize that all their gold is gone? See, what the nations are going to find out is they've been pillaged and plundered, and their wealth that they entrusted to this group of basically land sharks, piranhas in the financial arena, they're going to find out that they've been stripped naked, and that's when the armies are going to roar. That's when even the kings of the earth are going to watch Mystery Babylon burn. And again, you remember the amount of flack that it took when I said the Russians were here? And I interviewed, I think, Robert Jones. And do you remember that whole story, Doug, where he had his relative had been married to a Russian, and he was showing in the Kremlin the letter that was asking by the United States government, the Department of Homeland Security, to bring in Russian troops? All of these troops here are going to enforce their right, and they do have a right if they've been given a physical asset as collateral for a debt. The world courts are going to uphold them, and the whole world is going to wonder. You know, people used to think it was a metaphor, and V knows a gentleman that I've talked to that is a computer genius that sets up the most sophisticated international financial transaction software in the world. And it's going to happen in a nanosecond. It really doesn't matter who gets blamed. Somebody's going to get blamed. When we started talking about that on the Hagmann and Hagmann show, then the stories came out in the mainstream press. Well, they're worried about cyber attacks. If the people of this country knew how totally plundered they have been, And again, I said at the beginning of the show, if it doesn't make you cry that the heads of families can't feed their families, if it doesn't make you cry that, you can get the people that supposedly defend minorities and cry racism and slavery, but the government has made sure a permanent class of slaves exists, and I called it techno-serfdom 20 years ago. So now where we're at is the pillage and plunder has come to such a crescendo that Snowden, I believe that God raised him up. Whether he believes in God or not is irrelevant. But the full manifestation of how totally pillaged and plundered, there's no other, and rape. There we go. Let's go rape. The involuntary taking of that, which is, see, we're genetically raped every time they take a swab. Every woman who has been, how do I say this, private part molested by TSA or highway patrolmen, there was a time when that would have been so heinous, but see, we've hardened our hearts. We don't even cry, weep, or ask God to intervene when humans are being butchered by the religion of peace, having their heads cut off, their hearts cut out, and their livers cut out and eaten. And oh yes, they've contributed a lot to this world. Yeah, what? Tell me. Or the whole argument on racism, slavery. And then you have a whole group of people embracing Islam, and Islam was the ones that invented slavery. And this is the bottom line, that everything, that's why Jeremiah, listen, even Jeremiah had his day. He said, woe, woe, woe unto them who call evil good and good evil. I don't need Job's friends. I need men of God that will stand with me. That's what you need too, Jug. You don't need the people that pat you on the back and say, I'm with you, brother, or like David Langford. Pastor Langford has so much integrity. If someone sends him $50 and they knock you or me, he sends her back their money. He says, I don't want your money. One of the men that got mad at me, and I offered to make everything right, sent him a $50 donation, and I will not speak to that brother again. I've forgiven him, but I'll never speak to him because he intentionally bore false witness. Pastor Langford picked it up and said, I don't want your money. What you're doing is wrong. You're trying to buy me. See, there are men of integrity, and Pastor Langford is one of them. How do I say this? I don't know any man that could have just come on global radio. I'm not praising him. I'm acknowledging the God in him and lay it out for you so clearly, telling you not only do you think you may know what's going on in the financial realm, but no one has laid it out to that degree. Your chattel, your cattle, they're taking your DNA. They're probing your private parts. They're stripping you of your integrity. They're mocking your God if you're a Christian. They're stealing your children's hope, their future. They're robbing you of your inheritance. You're taking everything that you've worked all these years of your life for, and they're turning you into the contemptuous creatures that they see you at. And God gave man the ultimate dignity. And so every time you see another father who can't pay for his kid's food or do what he used to be able to do, or you see the brokenness in a woman's eyes, the housekeeper who knows she's got to make the rice go, and it's getting worse and worse. People send me emails day in and day out, pray for me. I just can't hold it together. And my prayer is, oh, that the God in heaven would move. It's amazing. People tell me to hang in there, brother. They've never donated to one cause that I've asked them to donate. Not me. I've never asked for money for myself. I'm asking for people to help other people. V and I are coming on and saying, look, to those of you who have been given much, we want to tell you how to have more so you can give more. Hey, if God doubles your money, at least be fair and give him 10%. And, Doug, you know this. I asked you this today. I said, Doug, I am going to say, if those people who are blessed by the Sunday night services don't step up and help you, and I'm not talking about generous people like Lisa and Barbara Kay and Goodnight JD and all the people that have been just so amazing and the people that have cut you. If they don't, then I'm off. You know why? Because that tells me that where God leads, he feeds. And if they put the Word of God and the blessing of the only radio show I know in the world that's serving communion to the world and covering people with the blood of the Lamb and crying over them, praying over them, invoking the angels of God to move in their lives and stuff, then, brother, may my tongue go silent and may I never speak again. Because that's what I see. I see such selfishness. I see such absolute, what would you call it, bleacher-type cheering squads, and people that have never been in the battle. They basically think if they sit at a keyboard and type, they don't have a clue. And so this is what I'm saying, Doug. I've asked, and I say, Doug, are your needs being met for the ministry? Ladies and gentlemen, think of all the money you've given, and this does not apply to any of you who can only give $5 or $10. You keep your $5 or $10. Keep it. Don't give it to Doug. He doesn't need your 5 or 10. You need it worse. But those of you who have been blessed, then ask the Lord, do you want to sow into good ground? It's the same thing. And I'll ask V and let him answer on the phone. V, is it not amazing to you that the people that have contacted you still are multitudes of the Valley of Decision, and they can't make up their mind? There are a lot of those people still, aren't there?
It's unfortunate because some people are so inured by the system that subconsciously they protect the system. Subconsciously they're loyal to the system. Even though verbally they would say, oh, you are right. Oh, I need to do something. But subconsciously fear grips them because they somehow think that things will always be, that this is just a rough patch that the country is going through. This is not a rough patch. This has been carefully planned and orchestrated since this nation's birth. And we are going into servitude. We are going into slavery. When you have the kind of economic situation that we have, there's no other way for it, folks. It's a mathematical impossibility. People ask me, well, what stocks should I buy? In which company should I move my investments to? The answer is none. I don't have any investments for myself in the United States. I have some foreign, but let me tell you, it is getting harder. This is a sign. And if you have ears to hear, please listen. Please listen to what I'm about to tell you right now. It is becoming harder and harder for Americans to open up accounts in other places in the world. I have had many associates who have had a great deal of difficulty, and myself as well, trying to open accounts for American clients in certain brokerages around the world. These are brokerages where we've had no problems before, where things ran perfectly smooth. Now there is problems. I'm telling you right now, folks, there are even certain mints that I've dealt with that right now, believe it or not, they are in cahoots with certain Chinese lead manufacturers. Okay? And these mints are not in the United States. You don't have to worry about that, but there are some in Asia, and there's particularly one in Australia that I don't like. This is what's happening because the physical supply is running out. And so many other people are trying to open up accounts. And what I'm trying to say is that these con artists are there and ready to take your money. Any legitimate brokerage house, things are getting harder. Why? Because back home, because since you are the collateral, because you are, and your property and the things you own in the U.S. dollar is a legal tender, is a currency, which is basically somebody else's debt obligation, and nobody wants it anymore because people see that the emperor has no clothes. And the fact that also the politicians are passing FACTA in January where they will tax to oblivion your funds that you hold abroad. They don't have anything to do with Americans. Folks, this is just already the first level of capital controls. Capital controls always begin internationally before they come home locally. Remember that. In every instance, capital controls always occur internationally in various markets before it comes locally and you are affected. Because of what is happening with clients, because of what is happening with associates of mine, that is how I know that time is close. Something is really different. Something is truly wrong.
V, what would capital controls in the United States look like?
Well, you won't have access to your bank with the type of banking hours that you're used to. They will be open for very, very limited periods of time. They will only allow you, if they allow you, depending how severe things are, they will allow you to maybe take out, instead of $1,000, maybe only $200, maybe even $100. And by that time, folks, your dollar that you're taking out has already been hyperinflated, so you can buy next to nothing, number one. Because that's how, as soon as these capital controls go into the U.S., people are dumping the dollar. They don't want it, okay? The other capital controls, say goodbye to your ATM networks. Say goodbye to trying to access your online banking. That's going to stop. There will be a complete freezing of all accounts in terms of you want to do account transactions where you want to move money from your checking to your savings or vice versa. That's going to cease. That's all going to stop. So you got, let's just say, $10 million sitting in a bank account, and you go up to, hey, let me take a couple of $1,000 from my savings account and move it into my checking account. They won't let you do that. So it's sitting there. You will not have access to your money because by law you are no longer a depositor. You are a creditor in this captured operation called the United States of America. That's what capital controls are going to look like. Another thing with capital controls, there will be limits on how much not only you're going to be able to take out, but not only that, you also limits on how many people will come to the bank. And also, if you want to take out money, you might have to write them a letter and stamp it, get it notarized, and wait about 10 days for them to get you your money. These are the things that are occurring. And then the second thing that would also occur is with capital controls, we've seen this in Greece, they're going to make it difficult for you to leave the country. You see, folks, they already have FACTA, F-A-C-T-A. If you look it up, it is basically capital control. It is basically wanting to tax foreign deposits. Americans who have deposited money abroad, they want to tax it. And also, if you want to leave the country, oh yeah, you're going to get hit with a 30% tax on everything you have. This is the kind of stuff that Nazi Germany did, folks. This is fascistic kind of stuff. And this is the same thing that's happening today. So these are just the first phase of capital controls. The second phase is even worse. The second phase is going to be very, very long, drawn-out lines. Waiting online 2, 3, 4 hours to go to get $100 out of your bank. You show up to your bank, there's a whole bunch of armed guards. There's thousands of people waiting online. And you're just trying to get $100 because that's all they'll give you. That's what happened in Argentina. That's what happened in the Soviet Union. That's what happened in every single one of these banker collapses. For us, it's going to be far worse because our currency, folks, is going to hyperinflate faster than any other currency in world history. And that is simply because we will be a world reserve currency that's going to be thrown on the wayside.
Are we going to take a backseat to China? Is what we're seeing right now. Actually, you had mentioned at the onset of the program this great transfer of wealth to the East. We're seeing right now the Shanghai Gold Exchange moved a record, 84 million ounces of silver in May alone. New gold exchanges are opening in Singapore, South Korea to meet Asian demand. China's on is this big buying binge to purchase or merge with various mining firms here in the West. They want a supply chain, unencumbered supply chain, to exploit the low market cap, for these mining firms and for the gold. And it seems like everything is going to the East. So is what we're witnessing. Basically the takedown, and not the collapse, but the takedown of the United States dollar as the world reserve currency.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, for many, many decades, we've enjoyed a very high, standard of living. It is an unsustainable standard of living based upon the economic structure that this nation has been built upon. It's completely convoluted. So in the Asian countries, they've made cheap goods, okay, and then we lived off their labor. So they became a manufacturing economy, sucking in all our jobs, sucking in all our manufacturing capacity, and we've brought this convoluted lie called, we're a service-based economy. Folks, you have to understand that the wealth of a nation is created on the factory floor. That's real wealth. There's no such thing in history of a service-based economy. That is nonsense. It is garbage. It has never existed in human history. Never. Every economic power has a manufacturing base. So, when you see right now the Asians have woken up, they have realized, hey, instead of us working like a bunch of dogs, why don't we just get rid of the shackles of the U.S. dollar, and then maybe we can have a burgeoning middle class. Maybe we can go take a couple of family vacations. Maybe we can go lie on the beach for a little while. And that's exactly what's happening. We are seeing a shift from the Western banking systems over to the wealth of the East. And you're seeing the formation of the BRICS Bank, or the BRICS Funding Bank. And this bank that they have created is the rival of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Now, folks, do not be confused. The main member of the World Bank and the main member of the International Monetary Fund is the United States. We're the primary shareholders in both. Okay? So, when the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have decided to create their own bank as a counterweight to this, this is the reason, folks, that this president is in a whole heap of trouble. This is the reason, folks, that we're in Libya. When we took down Libya, what is the first thing they did? They created a central bank. This is the same thing they want to do in Syria and all across the Middle East. Do you know why we're going to the Middle East? Let me tell you, don't buy the mythology that these people have been fighting each other for thousands of years. It's bullcrap. They haven't been fighting each other for thousands of years. It's only the last 100 years or so. It is with Western banking involvement that has decided to carve up the Middle East. Why? Well, in Arab culture, folks, and in pretty much every culture in the ancient Near East, it is not good, and it is considered a bad thing for you to lend money and charge interest. You see, that's complete anathema. That is complete opposite end of the spectrum to these banksters. And that is the main driver why we are in the Middle East. That's it. It all comes down to banking. So these banksters have bled America dry. We fought various bankster wars. Not only just the major conflicts we've had, but also the covert conflicts we've had. What do you think we killed Allende in Chile? Why do you think we've done that? Why do you think we've toppled Argentina? Why do you think in the last 50 years we've toppled 30 democratically elected governments? Why? Simply because of a banking economic interest. So, now that they have bled us dry, now that our troops are absolutely exhausted from fighting, doing 6, 7, or 8 tours, now they're getting ready to have this all collapsed. In order to survive, in order to service the Asian economies, America will be collapsed. We will be the biggest gulag ever created. But this gulag, okay, for those of us who are lucky enough that they will allow, those who are, I won't even say lucky, there's going to be a bunch of sellout lackeys. And these lackeys who love the system, who are brain dead, who are filled up on GMOs, who are filled up on the high fructose corn syrup that is in the beverages that they drink, these lackeys will be given jobs. They will be the call centers. Americans will be the ones doing customer service for Asian clientele. Americans will be the ones forced to learn how to speak Mandarin to service Chinese customers. Americans will be the one who will learn to do these things because we're going to be the call center of the world. We're going to be the customer service center of the world. Those of us who will be herded into the planned mega cities that these bankers want because they want total control. That's where they'll be existing. And the wealth is going to the east. Why? You know, people talk to me, V, aren't you worried about the credit crisis in China? No. V, aren't you worried about the banking crisis in China? No. You see, folks, the Chinese understood in order to beat the Americans in their own game, you're going to have to create some bubbles. Let me tell you, China is the most liquid market in the world. They have the liquidity to fix, or they have the liquidity to withstand a credit bubble pop. They have the liquidity. They understand that. Not only do they have the liquidity, but they've been stockpiling rare earth minerals, strategic metals, precious metals. They know what's coming. They know what's coming. They're not stupid. Japan is done, so what's the new Japan, folks? South Korea. South Korea, look at what they're doing. Look at the electronic products, the cars that are coming out of there. It's phenomenal. You see how it's moving? So because Japan decided to hook its trailer to the Western banking, the Anglo-American banking system. Europe decided to hook its trailer to the Anglo-American banking system. Germany in particular as well. And they're all paying for it. They're all going to go down with this ship. So yes, it is a massive transfer of wealth. Yes, it is going to be a massive, when this thing goes off, this will be a massive, not only a redistribution of wealth, but the largest land grab. I mean, think about it. You go to most national parks, you'll see signs. There's parks here in New York. You'll see UN biodiversity plaques on them. It's already been bought and paid for. There are so many of these resourceful lands that are filled with natural resources, rich in minerals. Why do you think the banksters did not allow any drilling of oil in the United States? Why do you think not a single refinery has been built since 1973? Because the deal is, folks, when this thing goes belly up, that's all going to be the spoils of war, my friend. The trillions of barrels of oil in the Baca Valley in Montana, or the Beacon Valley, I don't even know what the name of that place is, or the confirmed by congressional record, the trillions, there's more oil underneath the Rockies than there is in Saudi Arabia, confirmed by congressional records. Why do you think the banksters are not allowing that? Because that's collateral. That's for them to enjoy. That's for their cohorts to enjoy. And that's for them to be sold off to foreigners. That's what this is all about. It's not for you. And that's what we're seeing, Doug, a massive sell-off of our assets.
Steve, before today's program, I was talking with our mutual friend, the intelligence source that you and I speak to. And he mentioned this. He said, check out the Lockerbie bomber release linked to arms deal. And there was recently, and this is relevant, just bear with me for a minute. Recently there were some emails that were released, some memos that were released that go back to 2008. And in fact, the story appears in the Telegraph. The article in the Telegraph dated July 27th, written by Robert Mendick. And this article goes into the a 400 million pound arms export deal to Libya being set up via the UK. But the one key sentence here is the UK, now this is back in 2008, the UK made it a key objective for Libya to invest its $80 billion sovereign wealth fund through the City of London. Now, Steve and V, I think that's pretty clear that Arab Spring, Libya being bracketed by Tunisia and we'll say Egypt in a sense, I think it's pretty clear that this Arab Spring was never, as you said, V, was never about creating a peaceful situation or installing democracy in the Middle East. This was a bankers' war, and even I, writing about Benghazi, was not thinking big enough, and we have to think bigger. I mean, this is a huge lie thrust upon not just the American people, but the world. And so my question to you, V, is the UK, the City of London, this is where everything is going to be superintended out of, perhaps? Everything is going to be this global banking system that's going to come out of the ashes of this defunct global economic system. The City of London is going to play an important role in this?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Because
absolutely. That is the power seat.
Okay. The new British Empire is what we're looking at.
Yep.
All right.
Actually, Doug, I want to make it clear. The City of London's two patron saints, the ones that they honor, are two giants named Gog and Magog. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. Look up City of London and Gog and Magog. Every year they have a parade, and they bring out their giants, Gog and Magog. When you understand Ezekiel 38, there's more of an understanding that most people don't grasp. It will be the City of London and the international banking elite, the Luciferian elite, who will be generating that. In other words, just as there will be an earthly battle that we know as the Gog-Magog War, it's also being orchestrated. These people are the same entities that control all the technology, all of the fallen ones' technology, that have the super weapons. They literally believe they will prevail and make war against God. And let me share you something, since we're talking about financial situations. We know how much the U.S. debt clock goes up. What's the chances that you would have 70 straight days where this debt, the Treasury debt, is stuck at exactly $16 trillion? Now pay attention to these numbers: $699,396,000,000. If you notice in the world of occult numerology, all the sixes and nines, you can reverse them. What you've got basically is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got 6 sixes in that number. Well, it doesn't exist. It can't happen. So the point is that someone's fudging the numbers, and this is liars can figure, but figures don't lie. But when figures get stuck, it's a mirror to the liars controlling the numbers. Does anybody really think with the burn rate of money that we can stay for 70 straight days? When, Doug, what did you say? I think we talked about it, $35 or $50 million a day that we add to our national debt, and so that's like $3.5 billion that isn't there. So, it's got to be an Illuminati signal that it's stuck at $16,699,396,000,000. V, did you notice all of the sixes in there? Sixes and nines are interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, I never saw it in that way, because, the real debt of this country is about $225 trillion.
Right.
Yeah,
and see, the thing is that we're not being, and here's the thing, why, and this is a rhetorical question, you and I tell everybody what it's really like and what the big money's doing. And I'm the one on record, nobody else on record. I don't care. Take any financial advisor in the world. To my knowledge, now maybe there is somebody, but to my knowledge, since I've been in this as long as most people in the precious metals market, no one ever said the Chinese and the Russians would back the yuan and the ruble. No one ever said that 20 years ago. I said it 20 years ago. Why am I saying that? Because God is in the business of revealing the future and the present. So what I'm saying, and by the way, just look up Gog and Magog, Protectors of London. I should put it up on my website again. What's important is the spiritual aspect of this. Remember this, the finances, big war, and Big Brother go together. Now the American people have become the new enemy of choice, and so it's interesting. There was a story on the Internet today, I think I'm going to post it for tomorrow's postings, that basically said the Pentagon is languishing. Well, the military, the U.S. military, the military that was by enlisted men is being taken apart. It's being destroyed in order for the SS, the Homeland SS, to arise. And ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see a national service policy where people's student debt will be forgiven if they just join the brown shirts, the black shirts, or the blue shirts, whatever they call them, and when the time comes. So we're seeing a decimation of what was a national military, and we're going to see a private military, allegiance sworn to the fascist regime that rules this country, and there's going to be no more freedom unless you're one of them. And the price for getting your debts forgiven, let me get this in, Doug, the price for getting your debts forgiven will be whatever the mark of the beast is. It's going to be the devil's false jubilee. And do you think the people of this world aren't going to go wild when they get started out with a clean slate and who knows how much money with their universal debit card or whatever? People think that's far-fetched. That's what everything is headed towards right now.
We're up against the top of the hour break, yeah. So we'll take that now and hold that thought, V, for the third hour, as we are already 2 hours into this special Monday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with special guest Guerrilla Economist V and Steve Quayle at stevequayle.com. You can find V's alerts on Steve Quayle's site under the alert section when they are posted. Check the alerts every day, as there's other important information in there as well. With that, we're going to go to our break, and when we come back, we're going to have close out the show, the third hour. We got some listener questions to get into. I want to thank both.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a special Monday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, can you hear the gallop? Can you hear the gallop? That gallop you're hearing is the gallop of the four horsemen of the banking apocalypse. Our guests tonight, Steve Quayle and V, the guerrilla economist. So humbled, so proud to have them on our program. Gentlemen, welcome back, Steve Quayle and V. By the way, stevequayle.com and V's alerts can be read off of stevequayle.com, exclusively off of his website. Steve, welcome back. Go ahead and take over, my friend.
Well, I think at the end of the day, at the end of the night, people are going to have to do a lot of soul searching. Because, again, it's almost like, Doug, everyone's watching these things unfold. I don't know how many more headlines I would have to put up or how many more statements V would have to make to get people to understand that just because they don't experience what 80% of America experiences, or they may not have a mortgage, what it's like for the average person. You see, one of the things that's going to be the great equalizer, and this is why I love Alex Jones's title, Prison Planet. In a sense, that title defines exactly where we're at. You see, I don't think people understood that when the big prison complex was being built, not just an individual building, but I mean big business of prisons were being built, that ultimately America would become the quintessential serfdom state. Because at the end of the day, what you are is you're nothing more than a sharecropper, and you're nothing more than a serf to big business. And like V said, the rest of the world has watched in jealousy, but the American dollar was being not backed by gold. People should have been screaming when Nixon pulled us off the gold standard. They should have been in the streets. But again, as long as normalcy bias exists, as long as tonight's no different than last night, and I'm expecting tomorrow night to be the same, there will be no change. I think a good example of how far we've come is the heinous things that we're subjected to, the brutality, the cruelty, the absolute inhumanity, and now the proposal that parents be allowed to decide the fate of their child up until 3 years. In other words, you can have infanticide. If the parents don't like little Johnny or little Susie, they can kill them. Or how about the lack of any concern when little babies were having their heads twisted off? I have prayed, Doug. You've heard me pray this. This is a financial issue because what you're seeing, finance is nothing more than a religion applied to politics. I think it was R.E. McMaster that made that statement. And where the big disconnect comes, as long as I've got mine, you're okay, but you don't get it. What B's telling you is they're not going to let you keep yours. They're coming for yours. Like Pastor Langford said, you don't have to go looking for them. They're coming to you. And so, I get a thrill out of tough guys talking. I mean, when I say a thrill, I'm amazed. They don't have a clue what's coming at them. And that's why, again, this warfare has to be fought in the heavenlies. So when Jesus told the parables, I got to share something. I think most Christians think that Jesus is more of a storyteller than he is the Son of God. And he used the parables that he even said it, having ears they hear not and having eyes they see not, because their hearts are hardened. I have never met a tougher crowd than gospel-hardened Christians. Doug, after last night, by the way, praise the living God, I believe we had 12 backsliders come to the Lord and have miraculous conversion experiences. And if any of you missed last night's show in its entirety, that was a heavy show for the power of the living God. Was it not, Doug?
It certainly was, Steve, and it's accessible on our archives. You can get that on our archives. Absolutely.
Right.
I want to thank you.
Yeah, well, and again, it was not thanking us, but see, here's the thing. The Lord always confirms his word. Now, before I turn it back over to V, and because it's important that he be heard in his entirety, what I'm going to tell you is this. I have a regimen, a routine, if you will. I check with my sources daily. If I can't catch them with daily, I mean within 24 hours I will. And what I'm telling you is almost unimaginable to me. 10 years, 20 years ago in the metals business, been at it for 30-some years now, but it's just like the platinum and palladium market. By the way, watch the markets. I put the Kitco charts up on my front page for gold, silver, and platinum, and the point is you're watching platinum and palladium rise, rise, rise. And V and I talked in one of the last shows we did, either a time ago or 2 times ago, about the Chinese brilliant buying up the sources of the metals at the mine. You made reference to it, Doug, in controlling the whole chain of acquisition and processing. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something that you're going to have a hard time believing. America sold off, hawked off, bought off its gold. Fort Knox is a joke. The point being is this, is that any time you have a debauched nation that will debauch its currency, that will devalue its currency and print ad nauseum, the point is the people with strong hands will acquire that. Every day there's a new announcement of either India, China, Russia, or another nation buying more gold. It even goes to Sweden, or it goes to anybody that's saying, things are going to get tough. It doesn't matter if you believe that, the Ramsey view of financial investing, and this is something amazing. Christians will fight the biblical principle of investing, 90% of them will at least, yet they'll wholeheartedly endorse a piece of promise, a piece of paper with a promise and a lie attached to it. In other words, what I'm saying, they will always take the illusion over the real. And don't kid yourself. The point being is because everybody has that central nervous cord. If you don't have money, you don't eat in the natural realm. Obviously, when God says the money systems are no longer in place, or you're being told you don't eat unless you take the mark of the beast, then you're going to have to rely on God. I'm going to have to rely on God, and we're all going to have to rely on God in ways we never have.
but because Noah was the forerunner for us to model our lives after, because he believed God against all the mockery, all the scoffing, all the ridicule, and he had to put up with it for almost 120 years. 120 years, you know?
That's amazing.
And then you take the situation of interpreting Joseph's dream. I get so many dreams and visions, I can't post them all. I try and be selective. I pray over them. But if I were to tell you the central theme in the visions for the last week, there are three things: famine, severe earth changes, the United States being split, the East Coast, West Coast, inundated underwater, and Russian and Soviet and Chinese invasion of the mainland. Oh, fourth thing, and total economic collapse. Those are the big four. Those are the big four. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to email me, and look, I've said this, and I apologize. I don't mean to be getting off track, but what I'm trying to say is the same hard-hearted attitude that manifests itself in that I had to deal with today. Both V and I deal with that in email after email after email. And again, you know, I got one guy who sent me 8 different questions, and I've answered all his questions in the past, or V's answered all his questions in the past. And by the way, I need to correct myself. I did not know this, but I said I will correct this. I guess there has been Scriptures for America has been doing communion on their weekly Sunday service for years. So I stand corrected. I don't listen to them. I did not know about them.
Well,
but also I know this, Doug. I know that we have been used by the Lord, you, Joe, myself, V, and let's just face it, Pastor Langford, to basically minister to the people that are hungry, are starving. And we're also trying to give to the people to whom much is given, much is required, the best advice we can give. So when V comes out of a world that most of us, and including me, have not lived in, worked in, or been on the street or been in the back rooms, okay, of some of the biggest players in the world, you do well to listen to them. When Jim Willey tells you that there's panic in the presidency over what's going to be exposed, that maybe gives you an understanding of how truly raped you are. When you wake up and you've been passed out, it's just like date rape. You're going to understand you've been raped, pillaged, and plundered, and nobody's going to be there as your advocate. We are in a time where every man does that which is right in his own sight, especially the authorities. The brutality of law enforcement, not all in law enforcement, but when you've got 17 cases of 6-year-olds being busted for little things even as a squirt gun, where are the defenders of the innocent? Where are the captains of the Lord of Hosts army? Where are the people of God who stand against it? Where are those, the same spirit that drove the Revolutionary War, the heroes of the country? And by the way, Ho Chi Minh did not follow Thomas Jefferson. The fact that not one of those lying devils, scumbag media mouthpieces for hell itself would stand up and challenge that tells you they're in their back pocket. So here's what I'm saying. You want to really make a statement? Then turn off network TV. Get your knees busy. Get on your face. Say, Lord, show me what's important for me to know today, and then focus on that in prayer. There's so many people that rightly so are searching out the things to find out they be true. Here's what I'm going to say, Doug. I really am concerned with the availability of metals. Now, look, I'm not talking about the coin store. I'm talking about platinum and palladium. You know why platinum and palladium are going up? Is because people understand that there's a play being made for them right now. Do you know why silver is really tough to get in quantity and get it in a timely manner? Is because it's becoming more and more apparent that the East, the Far East, you spoke, Doug, at the opening of the show about the new vault in Singapore that's starting with silver. I can tell you this. I have clients that vault there. So the point is that there's a little bit of time, and V has narrowed the time down. Here's what I'm going to say, and then I'm turning over to V. The bottom line is you have a little bit of time left. If V's dream is going to be realized, and Pastor Langford has been saying it's going to be the fall, and everybody's telling us, and with the paratroopers in Billings, Montana on the 29th, And the paratroopers will secure the cities, ladies and gentlemen. The things they will take over, first of all, they take over the airport so no one can come in and no one can go out. Then they take over the water. Then they take over the power. They will control every aspect of your life. Every single store that sells food, every hospital, every school cafeteria, every restaurant will have a military unit attached to them. You won't be able to go down and say, gee, I didn't have time to prepare. Let me go buy a dozen Big Macs. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Every community in America, Doug, has already had an inventory. Those of you that want to basically contact me about the medals, send me an email, put medals, put your phone number and best time to call, and I got nothing better to do tonight. I don't sleep that much. If you want me to call you tonight after the show, I'll call you. But again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you point blank that we are in a period unlike any other. Now, I'm going... unless something that really needs to be said. V, I want you to tell people you've got the last, 37 minutes or whatever. You can just give it to them, brother, because there's no guarantee, V, you and I will ever be on this show together again. That's not a threat. It's just an awareness of the times we live in. Go ahead.
And Steve, wait a second, V. Let me take 1 minute of that 37 minutes. V, you mentioned a couple of things here the last 2 hours of the program. I just want to get you, kind of set the stage, get your take on this. August 15th, 1971, it was a Sunday night. That's when Nixon got on the television. You mentioned this. He took us off the gold standard completely. That's because it's my understanding the French wanted their gold, and, of course, we didn't have it, or we're not going to have any of it. So Nixon took us off the gold standard and enforced wage and price controls. Now, the biggest complaint by the American people was that announcement, presidential announcement, interrupted Bonanza. Okay, that's kind of, so that was back in 1971. The second thing, and perhaps, you can segue from this too, July 3rd, 1974, it was, 39 years ago this month, or 49 years ago this month, 59-year-old Louise Boyer was tossed out of her 10th floor apartment in New York City. It was ruled a probable suicide, however, not exactly. Anyway. Mrs. Boyer was the granddaughter of Colonel Edward Mandell House, the guy who guided the Federal Reserve Act through Congress for the Rockefellers, Morgans, Warburgs, and so on. Now, having said that, the reason she was tossed out, allegedly, was because she was going to reveal, or did reveal, that we are empty, devoid of any gold supplies in Fort Knox, basically, or gold was gone, and the gold was ferreted out via the super rich David Rockefeller. I just wanted to mention that because it seems like a timely thing and something to springboard from. I guess that's what we're seeing right now has not just happened overnight.
Absolutely. There's one thing that I would definitely say is this. When I was in the circles with these gentlemen, and they talked about this country being insolvent and broke, and they laughed about it because they knew what was coming. Folks, they understood one thing, and that one thing is, I really want you guys to understand this. The United States of America exists in name only. The United States of America exists only in name. That is it. Prior to us having been taken off the gold standard in 1971, causing the currency to float, causing the pure fiat experiment that's never been done before, and that's what brought us here today. You got to look at what also occurred on June 5th, 1933, when they abrogated the gold clause, saying that, that destroyed the convertibility of the dollar into gold, saying that a dollar is worth this many grains of gold. It effectively killed every single sovereign authority that the United States had in every capacity in every office and in every department. And because of that, and you can look this up, this was part of the 73rd Congressional Session. I think it was called HJR 192, if I remember correctly. And that is what took us, that set the stage for Nixon to put the nail in the coffin. But what also happened in the 70s, folks, China, the banksters opened up China for investment and development. Enter the dragon. And that's what also occurred. Do you see how these banksters play? Do you see how they do the maneuvering of what they've been doing? And that's where we are. It is a very critical time. When Steve says, hey, we might not be back on next time, because things are at a critical juncture, that anything could happen right now at any time. And like I said, I have that vision on 90 days. I'm hoping to God that we have more. I am praying that somehow this nation wakes up and is able to take the shackles off. Some people are saying, well, you're not giving any more predictions on this, that, and the other in terms of a stock to move into or money or a company or something. Folks, there's no more predictions to give. It's become so chaotic, day to day, behind the scenes. Do you think for one instance that I sit there and I watch the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ? That doesn't tell me anything. It's a lie. It's a total lie. Look at the real numbers coming out of economies from the world over, and it's painting a very graphic picture. And that graphic picture is a world without the dollar. And just like what Steve said, if you need metals, contact them. If you need financial guidance, contact me. My email is guerrillaeconomist@gmail.com. And for a fee, I could spend the time necessary to give you guys the strategies. I've helped a lot of people. I've helped some very big people in my lifetime. And I can do the same thing for you. It doesn't matter what you have. Right now, it's what you can protect. Are you able to protect yourself, your wealth, from what is to come? And folks, I'm telling you right now, the way things are, because of the loss of allodial titles, because of the loss of property, because of the loss of sovereignty, because of the loss that we are a captured operation that exists in name only, that the banksters even began to change the terminology, the language. We're no longer a constitutional republic, but they begin to call us democracy. They somehow beaten that into the social vernacular. Oh, we're a democracy, democracy, democracy. These are things that are synonymous with communism. And banksters have made sure that they put a very ardent communist in office. And very communistic policies are coming through. Folks, we're heading for, like what Steve said, a techno-feudalism. We're heading for a technocracy. America, you will become the sweatshop of the world if you do not wake up and if you do not stop it. That's what's going to happen. We're going to become the sweatshop of the world. Doug, if you want to add anything?
Just wow. I mean, what can we do, to stop this, if anything? I mean, we could, the only thing I can see right now is preservation of wealth, the wealth that we have. And once again, currency versus money. the reason after food, after water, after the basics, the metals to protect your wealth, and that's why you folks are big on that, and I'm big on that, is because that's the only thing that's going to store your wealth and keep its value. And it's not. You mentioned something very key early on. It's not the price of gold that's going up. It's the ability. I believe you mentioned this. It's the devaluation of the dollar. Right.
Yep, it's the fluctuation. The gold doesn't fluctuate. The currency fluctuates.
Well, okay. So, in essence here, we're out of time. We are out of time. Now, we obviously we can some of the basic questions, for example, and we're getting reports, V, and maybe you want to comment on this, because I received this, and I don't quite get this, because in Canada, from a listener in Canada, they got a letter from the Royal Bank of Canada that they had a low interest rates credit card. Now, perhaps this is what we're seeing is what this person is seeing is what you are saying in action here. They've got a low-interest credit card balance in the 5-figure range. The letter stated the interest rate is changing in October from, I believe it's like 7.0 or about 7%. It's going to triple to nearly 20% or 21%. Is this? Oh, and by the way, this is going to start in October. Have you heard anything about this, or is this what we're? Is this
absolutely
kind of what we're seeing?
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you that you brought that to mind, folks. There's so much happening right now with interest rates. There's so much happening in the derivative market with interest rate swaps that these things are really starting to come apart. Look, here's the thing. A few weeks ago, a 30-year mortgage was about 3.99%, okay? That's the average going rate in the market. Look at it today, 4.6, 4.7? You're talking about massive jumps. Why? Because the U.S., you have the IR swaps, which are affecting the U.S. bond market, which is causing a pressure and an uptick in the interest rates, which is further affecting financial instruments like Visa, like MasterCard, which is going to cause them to increase their rates and their fees, which is going to go ahead and affect the issuing bank like the Royal Bank of Canada or any other bank that issues credit cards to cause their interest rates to go up. It's all coming to a head. And folks, look, I'm going to throw this out there, and I just feel led in my heart to do this. I've had clients of mine ask me, should I leave the country? And I just said yes. Okay? And I've mentioned earlier before, I even thought I'm getting to the point where, look, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. 5 years ago, I was all gung-ho, let's make a stand. Okay, let's take it all back. And I'm telling you right now, unless there's a God-given miracle, okay, what is coming upon us, we're not going to stand it. Because, look, I would have been happy if that the only thing we'd have to face is foreign troops. That's fine with me. But you have to understand what the bankers have been doing, where they've been putting their money. They've been putting their money in robotics, in drone technology. What's befalling us, folks, is not going to be just foreign soldiers trying to, trying to reap the spoils of war. No. You're going to be hunted by robots, by drones, all sorts of new technology that is going to be unleashed upon you. Remember what I said. America exists in name only, and the only way this government shows its or displays its existence, so to speak, is to be in an act of perpetual war. This government has run out of enemies to fight. They cannot fight the communists anymore. They cannot fight World War I or World War. That's all done away with. So what's left? The war of terror is a big joke. People see what the naked farce that is. So what's left? The American people. Now the American people is the enemy. You have journalists being killed off left and right, in plain view, in public eyes. Nobody says nothing. You have scandals occurring at a rampant rate. Nobody says nothing. Folks, I've never seen cognitive dissonance in such great display as it is seen in this country. Look, bus fares go up in Brazil by 20 cents, and people are protesting in the streets. In Spain, they hike tuition rates, and people are protesting in the streets. The government's running and cowering. Over here, they're killing journalists in broad daylight, and nobody says a damn thing. Folks, 5 years ago, I would have stayed around. But I'm getting to the point right now, and I'm telling you right now, if any one of you, and I've offered this to my clients, if you want to get the heck out, give me a call, contact me, I will relocate you. And that's how serious things are getting.
Wow.
That's how serious things are getting.
Wow. Wow. And folks, please understand how serious of a statement that is. V, not to go off track here, but this is kind of a segues into this question. If you've got $100 grand in one hand or in a briefcase or whatever, in cash, cold hard cash, $100 grand in a briefcase, and you've got a house, whatever, with $100 grand mortgage on it, would you invest that $100 grand in precious metals, or would you take that $100 grand, pay off the mortgage, or what would you do?
I take that $100 grand and I invest it immediately into precious metals. I'll take maybe a few $1,000s if I have that left over, and maybe buy a commodity-backed currency, depending on the geographic location of where I am in this country. For instance, if I'm in the geographic location that I'm in right now, which is in New York, it is a world city. This is a world. There's so many ethnic backgrounds that live here. So I have Swiss francs. I have Norwegian krones. I have Aussie dollars. These things are valuable to me because these are commodity backed. They will have some segue in value. But more so than that, I have a great deal amount of my wealth preserved in precious metals. I'm not worried about my mortgage. I'm really not. Because, look, I never concern. When people ask me, in a hyperinflationary environment, do I worry about my mortgage? And I always said no, because in hyperinflation it'll be easier for you to pay off. Folks, the laws that are being passed now with these new mortgage laws that are going to be coming down the pike, you're going to lose your house, whether you have a mortgage on it or whether you don't. That's what it's coming down to. Now, if these guys have the gall to start taking houses from people who already have the deed and the title to the houses, which I really do believe that that's what they're going to try and do here, then all bets are off. Why do I want to pay money to something I will never own? Now it's to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to put my money in precious metals. If I have some money left over, I am thinking about leaving. I don't know why I'm telling this over the radio right now, but I feel strongly and heavily in my heart, brothers and sisters, if you have the ability to get out, get out. Get out. Leave. If you got kids, if you're able to speak a foreign language, if you have family abroad, you're able to leave now, because you have about 2 more months to get out. And then you won't be able to. I promise you, by December, with FATCA, what they're going to be passing, you will not be able to leave. Try to get across the Canadian border then. See what happens to you.
Wow. You feel that strongly, but can we outrun this? I mean, V, will this not be a global meltdown, or
no? No.
Okay.
It won't be, because there are countries right now, as I'm talking to you, Doug, Steve, Joe, that are completely liquid, that still do their transactions mostly in cash, very little credit debt. There are countries that have very low debt, government GDP ratio that's very low. So there's no welfare state, and good luck trying to implement a mark of the beast system down there. They'll laugh at you. There are countries that are so loosely regulated economically that even trying to collect taxes is an issue. Okay? So there are still nations. And those nations, they won't. It'll be like a little road bump, a little bump in the road, a little speed bump for them. For us, it's going to be like hitting a full-scale wall at 200 miles an hour. That's going to be the difference. There are still places that are like that. And the funny thing is, there are elites that are buying, very wealthy individuals that I know of, that are buying large parcels of land, not only for themselves, but also for their buddies. Bill Gates happens to be one of them.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And folks, you can contact the Guerrilla Economist at guerrillaeconomist@gmail.com. Steve, wrapping this up, your final thoughts, your final statements, anything else, and then we can split this up between you and V to close the program out.
I think V has given the best presentation of where we're at, how we got here, where it's going to lead. And again, Doug, when I wrote Genetic Armageddon, I'm just telling people that if you don't know what's coming, the fear will overwhelm you. Every book I've written, and I'm going to make this one last statement, I wrote these under the guidance of the living God to tell people ahead of time what would be there. And people have emailed me, and you know this, you've gone back and said, wow, that was written 10, 15 years ago. How did you know? The answer is a man has nothing except he receive it from above. I could not have known unless God made it known to me, okay? So in my capacity as a watchman, I have had the good pleasure and the grace to basically be so far ahead of time because the God who created time is in love with his creation. He wants his family back. I concur with V. I tell people when they say, should I get an overseas account? If you're ready to move overseas, you want to be where your money is. If you have metals in the state, you must bury it someplace other than your primary residence. You must tell no one because, again, there's a famous statement in the world of preparing called, they won't prepare, but they'll remember you have. I have seen in the last, let's say 96 hours, besides having to battle an email, I've just seen a complete and an unusual desperation in the eyes of people. It's almost like the Lord's saying, look there, Steve, that person needs me. He's totally hopeless. Look there, Steve. And I mean, it's becoming, Doug, so heavy. I made this statement. I walked outside, and I live in big sky country. For those of you that are watching the photographs I post, the ones that are going up from Yellowstone were taken a couple days ago and stuff, some of the most beautiful things. But the atmosphere is changing. It's becoming heavy. It's becoming, when I say this, blurry, where it used to be clear, where it used to be you'd walk outside, you could take a breath of fresh air. It's becoming heavier. I would urge those of you that have large portfolios to talk to V. Now, why am I saying that, Doug? Because I'm still believing that God has a ram in the bush. My good friend Mary Juarez, and I tell people, I love Latinos. I owe my life to two Latinos, okay? I love, so there's no, anything in me outside of Mary Juarez always used to say this. She said, son, when you come to your end, remember, God always has a ram in the bush. And, oh, Lord, what a marvelous statement, meaning the Lord will provide. I tell everybody you must do what Jesus tells you to do. The days of fighting with our spouses are coming to an end because basically when we go out, when God leaves us, takes us out to wherever we're going, to some that'll mean a foreign country, to some that'll mean a different state, to some that'll mean a different town, to some that'll be a different mindset, but wherever we go, we must seek the Lord and say, Lord, where do you want me? Because we can look with the natural eye and think it would be just great going to this place, or that place. But the point being is that if God says, but the Lord is not in that place, V is a young man. I'm not twice his age, but I'm 62, and he's sub 40. He's got a wife and a new baby. Those of you who care for your children and your grandchildren, men, be like Moses' mama. Get them in a reed boat. Get them in a raft and get them out of here if the Lord shows you to do that. And, Doug, what I'm saying, and here's the sad part. I don't want to say this. When the Lord showed me what was coming, that stuff I sat on for 40 years, I just, and I got to hold it together. What I saw being done to the children of believers so took me back that I literally could not speak, and I can't even do it tonight except to say this. You must seek the Lord for your loved ones, your little ones, and God knows if I had to say goodbye to my granddaughters forever and my kids forever, knowing that they would be safe, I'd lay it down in life. And what father wouldn't lay his life down for my daughter? What father wouldn't lay his life down for his son? I've tried to bargain my life over the years to God, saying, heal this person, Lord. Take the years off my life. And God said, I don't work that way, Steve. Listen, we're talking about life and death. I know the day comes. The other day I was praying about the internet when I was going through internet hell. The Lord said, Steve, the decision to take down your website will be made for you. You won't have to do it. I said, Lord, am I just wasting time? I mean, I was so frustrated, Doug, I could just spit, okay? And beat these things with a baseball bat. But the bottom line is it wasn't that. The frustration level got so high, but the Lord said, you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to take care of that. So what I'm saying to people tonight is, look, I don't know how long we have, but the Lord said it's not a matter of time, Steve. It's a matter of the action. The actions that people take will affect your life, and you have to be positioned prior to that. Please, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that want to call V, send them an email at your Guerrilla Economist. What is it, V? Guerrilla Economist?
At gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Sorry, I had a mental block there. For those of you that want to talk to me about metals quickly, you don't have the option of saying, well, I can get it for $1 cheaper if I buy it from this town, that town, or the other town, but I got to wait 6 to 8 weeks. You're gambling with your life. That's not a scare tactic. It's true. So, Doug, what I'm saying tonight is simply this, is that we are in the most dire and precarious time. Jesus himself, and I'll end this and turn it over to V for the rest of the hour, Jesus himself said there's never been a time like it, nor will be again. And except the days be short and there be no flesh left alive. The brutality, the butchery we're seeing, and you know what? I don't see the aisles of the churches or the pews or whatever the thing, the altars, that's the word I want, the altars being lined with people crying out. Now, maybe they are in their privacy of their room. I don't see the people of God absolutely beseeching the Lord. Now, look, I don't know. I don't listen to Christian radio. I don't listen to Christian talk. So if I make a statement like I was wrong on that serving communion, it's not intentional. It's just I don't listen or I don't want. I try and redeem the time that God has given to me. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's no guarantee. The last time V and I were on together was at least, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Doug?
Yes, it was in June. Actually,
okay.
A little bit more than a month ago.
Okay, so there's no guarantees. We have no guarantees. Those of you who have been blessed, I ask you one more time, those of you who can afford to share, those of you who believe in tithes and offering, you're not in a church, please support the Hagmann Show. It's irrelevant whether I come on. God will put up David Langford. God will raise up, Jim Jones or Bill Smith. I don't know. I'm making these names up. There's nothing dependent. Nothing's dependent. We're all dependent upon the living God. Jesus does love you. Boy, you've been blessed, ladies and gentlemen. If you knew the person I know that's speaking to you in the person of V tonight, the man is absolutely telling you as straight. There's no BS factor. He lived in that world. He still rubs elbows with that world, and you're doing yourselves a great disservice if you turn down the answer. Don't, when you get to heaven, say, well, you never told me, God. God said, what about those 2 people you just said were crazy? What about V? What about Steve? What about Doug? What about David? Or the litany? And again, that's what the Lord is saying. Those of you who can act, should act. Those of you who are unable to act, let me share this with you. My heart is secure in knowing the Lord himself will be your provision. He will be your protection. He will be your high tower. He will be your secret place. Whether you're a widow, a single mom, a widower, a single man, God himself is the author of the family. It doesn't matter what hell tries to do to redefine the family. God is going to arise as our Heavenly Father through the power of the Son of his love, the Lord Jesus Christ, and he's going to set some records straight. Go ahead, V.
He's got the last word.
Definitely.
Go ahead.
Well, again, if anybody out there, you got a large portfolio, contact me. I will show you exactly what you need to do to protect yourself from what is to come. I will give you the best possible advice that I know how, into the best possible availability. I will point you in the right direction. It's important. It's very critical, And as I said, things are so different. Just when I think that it's not, it's worse than I thought it was, it gets even worse than that. It's as the days are falling off the calendar. I'm seeing that it is getting perpetually worse. There are new laws that are about to be passed. There are new laws that are in the works that they don't even have a docket number on that will be passed as well, because this is what they want. They are going for broke. And they're going to do anything in their power to make sure that they get the results that they want. The only thing, folks, is only a miracle of God is going to stop this. And I hope and pray, and one thing you got to understand, if this country wakes up and returns back to its creator, returns back to the creator, we can stop this. Okay, it doesn't have to be in our generation. If we repent, it doesn't have to be in our generation. But the problem is, when we are out there and we're throwing up figures, when figures like 80% of Americans will be facing financial hardship in their lifetime, it's hitting people in the face. The fact that 101 million Americans are on food stamps or some sort of food assistance from the government, when those numbers hit you, the fact that you have a real unemployment rate of anywhere between 23 and 24%. We have 90 million Americans permanently out of the workforce. Folks, if that doesn't wake you up, I don't know what it is about the middle class and upper middle class. It just seems that as long as they're getting their paycheck, it's always that my for and no more mentality. That it's always going to be somebody else. But let me tell you something. The reaper's coming. The financial grim reaper's coming. And it's going to be knocking on your bank account. It's going to be knocking on your wealth and your posterity's wealth. You need to do something about it, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen very quickly. It's going to affect us all. And the numbers and figures that I've given you, if that doesn't smack you in the face and wake you up, then, folks, I don't know what will. Then we're too late. You see, we're lucky. We're blessed. The Bible says the goodness of God leads you to repentance. This country, we've had it so good for so long, and yet we never turn back. And now the day's coming that we are going to be turned back. We're going to be turned back into captivity. And it's heading in a situation that, folks, it's not going to work out well for us. And that's the thing that we need to understand. That's the thing that we all need to wake up to.
Powerful. Very powerful program tonight. Steve, I want to thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you, my friend. You've been through the mill, and if people only knew, and that's as much as I'll say about that. V, same with you, too, my friend. I'll tell you what, a couple of emails from the both of you, just seeing the type of emails you get, kind of, I thought my monitor was going to start on fire. But that's I'm going to tell you that's what we're going through right now. It's that disconnect. People don't believe it's going to happen here, and they lash out at the messengers. Joe, it's been a great program. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for coming on, and I do hope we can do this again. I hope we last. I hope there is time for us to do this again, and to perhaps report some good news as to some inroads we might make. But in the event that's not likely, I just want to say thank you so much for imparting your knowledge, your wisdom, and once again, for metals, stevequayle.com, numbers on the website, and for financial advice, guerrillaeconomist@gmail.com. Joe, let's close out the program, my friend.
been a fantastic program. I want to thank both Steve and V for coming on. Last night we had Steve and Pastor Langford. Excellent program. If you guys didn't get a chance to listen, go download that archive and listen to that as it was powerful, just as of previous Sunday. And tonight, V, the information that you have shared with us, we really appreciate it, and I hope you're wrong. Just to tell you that up front. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge and doing what you do. And
absolutely.
I look forward to doing another show with you sometime soon, my friend.
Yeah. Do not.
Absolutely.
Don't go away. Don't go under the polar ice caps yet. We
no.